Into Sele Valentine's Day.
Հա՞։
Այսօր դղամը աղջկամը բաճի գրավ, օրյորթը Valentine's Day-ի բահ է սավիրեն։
Տոնական օրը լալու է։
Որ օրն է։
Չեմ գիտեր, օրացույցին վրա նա է։
Օրացույցը ուր է։
Խոհանոցը։
Շատ բարձր կախված է։
Hi everyone, welcome to Carolyn Talks. I'm your host, Carolyn Hines, film critic and journalist, and this is the podcast / YouTube channel where I speak to film creators around the world about their work, the industry, and what inspires them. And today is one of my special interviews for the 2024 Toronto International Film Festival, and I'm joined by filmmaker Arshile Egoyan, and we're talking about his film Before It Became, and it's a short film, but it's a very impactful short film because it talks about the effects of war on children, but also the effects of immigration and migration. Because usually when we get films about immigration, we don't really get from the child perspective. And this film is about that, but it's talking about the transition period, about leaving home and then just after you arrive. So I thought that was an interesting thing. So first of all, thank you so much for joining me. So actually talk to me about making the film from a child's perspective, but particularly a girl, instead of like a boy, you know. Talk to me about doing that, especially the age that she's at. She's around 12, 13?
Yeah, around there, exactly, yeah. I mean, so the story is based on my mother's immigration to Montreal from Lebanon during the Lebanese Civil War, 1975. And yeah, it's really her story. It's a peculiar story for all kinds of reasons, but I really wanted to ground it in her experience. And in developing the story, in excavating it from her larger life, the context of her larger life, the question of how to represent it most accurately was front of mind. And so the idea of it being a girl went hand in hand with it being my mother. And really it's a story of yeah, as you said, it's a young person discovering a new space, leaving one behind, being there with her younger sister who she's responsible for. And so, yeah, it is the story of being a young woman going through this colossal shift.
Right, and the film starts in an interesting spot. It starts with Talia. She's the main protagonist of the film, and she's in the car with her parents and her younger sister, and they're on their way to the airport for her to go to Montreal. And they're having this almost innocuous conversation about choosing like fabric for clothing. And while her parents are doing this, you can tell the parents are trying to distract themselves from what's happening, but she's a child, so she doesn't understand that. So in order to like offset the mood, you know, because for her this is a scary situation, and she's thinking my parents aren't taking this seriously, you know. And so she starts talking about a relative who was killed by sniper fire. And at first, when I first watched it, I was thinking, she doesn't understand that recounting this story is traumatic for her own parents, because you know, as adults we can, like, for me, I'm a very visual person, so when someone tells me something, I picture it happening in my head. So I can imagine her parents thinking, as she's talking, is they're picturing this happening to her. You know, she's talking about a cousin, but they're picturing this happening to her. And at first I was thinking she's doing this unaware of what that means, but then I thought, you know what, I think she did do it intentionally, because she wants them to feel as scared as she does in that moment. So talk to me about starting the film there, because I thought it was a really interesting place to begin the story.
Yeah, I think that's a really emotionally sensitive observation, and it's exactly true. I think she's at an age, you know, when I was her age, I was a very provocative child, and I think there are a lot of things that we're unsettled within ourselves, and so we externalize it because we want to communicate how we feel, but we also want to see how other people respond to us. And yeah, she's going through this thing that she can't make sense of. It's impossible for a child to understand war as a context, and there is a lot of fear, and it's frustrating for her to feel alone in that fear. But of course she's not. It's just that the parents are better able to suppress it and compartmentalize it. But those walls she hasn't been able to construct within her own frame of reference yet. So she doesn't understand them, and she tries to break them. I think, proving provocative.
Yeah, she was, because I always think about how as adults we think of things as adults now, but then suddenly when we're watching a film about a child or situations, we have to remember how we would have thought about it as a child. So that's why I had like two different reactions, because I had to sit and think, oh wait, she's a child, but this is what she's doing.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing about that scene that I thought was really interesting, I made a note, like there's safety can be bought, but it's not guaranteed, because when they're going, they have to pay like the border patrol officer and to allow them to go, because even though they have the papers to be able to go to the airport and go to Montreal, there's no guarantee that the person at the border is going to actually let them through, because he's the one with the gun and he's the one with the power. He's not an official, he's not a government official or anything, he's just a soldier with a gun, but he has all the power to change your lives in an instant, selfishly, whether they pay him off or not. He has the money, but he could change. So talk about that, because I think that's something a lot of people, I've never been through war or conflict, right? But I watch it on the news, especially with everything happening in Palestine with the genocide, and then you think about how, and I remember I had this conversation with someone else at another film festival where I'm 41 now, and my birthday was August 31st, but I have never had a year of my life that I can think of where there hasn't been a consistent war. Beginning with like Sarajevo, Kosovo, you know, and like all of the wars in like Africa and like West, like I don't recall, but like these are things that people are going through daily, you know. Like we're here at the festival, but there's all these other things happening in the Middle East.
Concurrently, I mean, I think we're a very destructive species, and
our own worst enemy.
We are, and obviously we're capable of doing incredible things when we decide to, but we can also be the source of like unimaginable devastation. So I mean, in the film, what interested me about the character, the militiaman who stops them, and my mom would talk about this in the Lebanese Civil War, but I imagine in all conflicts, you have people who just before the conflict felt entirely powerless within the context of their lives. You know, often are marginalized or they don't have choice, and all of a sudden you put a gun in their hand, and that's power, you know, and so for the first time they are in a position to decide how other people will experience things, and as you can imagine, it's like it's power is a strange thing to yield, especially for people that haven't had it, and I think in a context where resources are, you know, scarce, there's an immediate tendency to extract, and it's a horrifying context, you know. It's like and understanding how to navigate it, and the precariousness, you know. They have, as you said, the tickets to Montreal, and in theory there's this whole thing, but there's this whole plan, but it can so easily be disrupted by one person's decision, and so anticipating that, one has to be strategic, but it's you and your luck a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's you and your luck, but then also thinking from Talia's perspective, like she has her younger sister, but her younger sister is about 6-7, so she's not fully at that age. But Talia's 12-13, so she's at that transition again. I think the film is talking a lot about transitions, and for her, like she's at a transition where she's going from childlike to more teenager to more mature way of thinking. So again, this is an interesting juxtaposition where it's also about transition of power, you know, like in the curve of the conversation, she's changing power dynamics in the conversation from her parents to her. She controlled that conversation, but then she got to see this man control her own parents. You know, something she never thought she'd see. She got to see her parents, these authority figures, these people that are telling her what to do. Like, you have to be in charge of your sister. You are going to have control over your sister. But she's watching and realizing they don't even really have power themselves. And that's when she's really getting the first inkling that power is ephemeral.
Yeah.
And it's all about, and in the way we live, like with war and everything, it's all about who has the gun.
Yeah.
You know, and it's all about who, and it's about what will that person do. But even if the militiaman doesn't shoot, even if he doesn't intend to, he knows that having that gun gives him a power over the family.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to even speak threateningly.
Yeah.
He just has to have it. And it's understood. And she's seeing that. And I think for a lot of, especially for a girl, she's seeing the power dynamics between men. Before she's seen it between like male and female with her father, her mother, and like her grandparents and whoever, but she's now seeing power dynamics between two men. Talk to me about that from like a male filmmaker perspective, because I thought it was like a really interesting thing for, especially again, two girls instead of again like two boys or whatever, but to see that dynamic between two men.
Yeah. So again, the film takes place, or that part of the film takes place in Lebanon in 1975. The family is an Armenian family, and the gender expectations at that time were really strict and set. And so with the father's character specifically, we see a lot of anger.
Yeah.
And I think that anger is the only thing that he's allowed to feel. And so in the context of the family with these three women, he's comfortable expressing it, and he's fulfilling in some way an expectation. But then when he's up against this other man, he is quite acquiescent, and it shifts, and he can't be angry because it'll cost him and his families their lives. And so I wanted to emphasize that shift, you know, because I think anger is an outward emotion. It's an assertion of power in a sense. And then that dynamic completely shifts again with the presence of this gun, and it's a humiliation in a way, because he's robbed of that role, you know, and it's complex.
It is complex because like right after, once they get past, his attitude changes completely again, and this is again like transitions and emotions and all this, and she's seeing this and she's like, she's like, what?
It's a lot to process.
She's like, what is happening? You were authoritative, then you were subservient, then you were authoritative again, and then you're telling me that I have to listen to you and do all of these things. She's like, but do I really? And you can see like the gears working in her head. She's like, but do I really have to listen to you now though? Because I just saw you, basically shut down.
You were undermined,
You're undermined. So she's like, and she doesn't have the language for it, but I think the actress that you selected, she does such a fantastic job with her face, and she's very expressive, and you can read everything that she's experiencing in her face, and it's not that she's like super mature and everything, but she's giving this reactions from a child, but she's, as I think as an actress, she's fully understanding what you're requiring of her of the role, and she does all of this so brilliantly. And like again, there's like once they reach Montreal, the scene in Montreal is like basically two main scenes in Montreal.
Yeah.
But like again, she does such this thing where like when she's in the cupboard and she's calling her mom, and you can see the fear and the confusion and like this thing, and she's like such a complex performer. I want to talk about the scene in the cupboard, but I want to talk about her. Like, how did you find her? Because like this, like I was like watching her like
she's excellent. Yeah. Laurie was fantastic and a real gem. It was to find. It was a challenging casting process because the film is an Armenian language film. I tapped the Armenian community in Toronto with the help of my mother and my former Armenian teacher and actress, Iseta Kishishan. And we went to the Armenian Community Center, we went to the Armenian High School, and really it was a community effort to find these children, because there weren't professional actors that fit the description that spoke Armenian and that were that age. And so it was really us and our luck, and when I watched these two auditions, one with Laurie and the other one with Ava, it was like, it was just, it was incredible, and the decision was made because they were so strong and they understood the roles so well, and it was extremely lucky because it wasn't a large pool, and so to find talent within that pool was not a given, and they really just brought everything to the project.
Yeah, no, they were fantastic, and we have to wrap it up. But I think my
sure.
last question for you is going to be the scene in the closet. So they went to Montreal and they're living with their cousins, and like their cousins are Jehovah's Witnesses, and I thought this scene was so interesting. Like they're praying about the possible coming of the world, Armageddon, and like kind of like how in like 2020, was it 2000? We thought Y2K would be the end of the world, but for Jehovah's Witnesses, they were convinced it was going to happen. So she's in this closet, this cupboard, and she's calling her mom, and she's thinking the world is ending because she doesn't believe it, but because of they're praying so fervently, and her sister's like there, and she's like it has to be happening because these people are convinced, and she's thinking my parents have died, and like and the thing is like she's not even thinking her parents have died because of the war, but she's thinking they've died because of Armageddon.
Exactly.
And then she's calling them, and then her mom picks up, and it's a New Year's party, and she's like, "Are you?" End the film there, and talk to me about that because it was a cliffhanger basically, because you're thinking she's thinking, I have these people thinking the world's end, and my mom is there having a party, and then it's thinking, why can't I be there if you're surviving, you're having a party, and you sent me here? What was the point?
So actually, it's a hard tell because the only clue is that it's in French, but it's not her mother. It's a friend who's calling her in Montreal, asking why she's not at the party. So in fact, So the construct is that it's New Year's Eve. She's expecting the world to end in minutes, and is desperately trying to call her mother in Lebanon, who she thinks she's never gonna see again for the reasons that you said. And then of course the clock strikes 12. Her mother. We think it's her mother calling, but it's not. It's this friend of hers at a New Year's party, and for her it's the beginning of a new life in Montreal where the world hasn't ended. She is here. She is in a new space, and hopefully it's the beginning of a journey in a new context.
It'll be a beginning of a journey because she was legit. She was like, okay, the sky isn't falling.
The sky isn't falling.
So,
Exactly.
But thank you so much for talking with me.
Of course, thank you so much for the time, and it was a real joy talking about the film.
Yeah, I wish we had more time because I wanted to talk about music, but we don't.
Sure.
But thank you so much and congratulations
Thank you very much.
on showing the film here at the festival.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.